Alright, so today I'm going to go through the process of building or cutting, whatever, fabricating metal Maytag fenders for the Fox Carbide. I personally don't care for fenders, but you know, they serve a purpose. So, for people who don't have a welder, there's ways to get around it. So, I'm going to show you what I did. Right here is a drum from a dryer. These screws on the outside hold the plastic fins in. You got to get rid of them. On these drums, there is a seam line. That seam line is square. Okay? So you can use that as a reference point. Now, I think I cut 18 inches. Is what I use for those fenders. The way to do this, to measure them around, is, I call it chasing the surface, or chasing the plane of the surface. You start right here. That's my seam. I know that's square. If I want to go to 18 inches, I need to roll this around, never leaving the surface of the drum. See how I just slid? That's bad. So, what you do is you get that sucker rolled around, and remember, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. See, I'm moving a little bit, but it'll suffice. Anyway, you can get yourself pretty close. And that's 18 inches on the circumference. Much easier. No, I still move. Now we're going to pretend that's square. And that's my first cut line. My advice is go ahead and mark out all your lines first before you cut anything. When you cut it, you're cutting straight through everything. These lips actually serve a purpose in the end. So, once you have a piece cut out, okay, I'm not going to be cutting this drum right here. Once you have a piece cut out, you have two different radiuses here. Alright? So, for me, it doesn't match left or right. So I did two pairs. You know, I used the one side radius for my fronts, the one side radius for my rears. Either way, it doesn't really much matter. You can measure pretty much along your flat. Okay? So we're looking at roughly 16 inches. That's all we need. Put that in half. Once again, these don't have to be perfect. I'm just going to use this as a pattern to show. Now, obviously, I trimmed a little bit off of that. I made it work to where I wanted it. My radius on my corner, just a can. That's all you need. Alright. I suggest a can because it matches the it's not imaginary, but it appears when you cut this fender a certain way, it makes a false appearance of a round, kind of. And if you'll notice with mine, I cut way too big of a radius here. I should have cut it way smaller. You know, it is what it is. It's just a fender. So that's all I did right there. Okay. You're going to cut that bad boy out, cut along that seam. You'll have another mark over here, or, you know, if you're worried about your holes, you can go from here this way. Make all your marks, cut out your pieces, and you'll end up with something like this. something like that. That's your extra. Then obviously, you know, these pieces are part of the round. I cut everything with an angle grinder. Also, once I had my fenders cut, you know, I had them clamped on there and everything, and I just marked where I thought looked good. What I did, you know, I know this is loose, my other side's tight. I pretty much got this where, you know, eyeballing it to where I like the look of it. And then I used, you know, whatever clamps I had. I happen to have a lot of bar clamps and pipe clamps because I used to do woodworking. So, you know, use whatever you got. That can give you at least just a visual of how everything's going to look in the end, you know? All you need to do is mark through the hole from the underside. Alright? Then you'll have a mark. Or in my case, you know, I did reference points. I also, once I got a general mark, I went ahead and I measured everything down here. I measured the spread of these bolts. I know this is centered between these two. I know these are going to be the same measurement from this bottom lip to these holes. Another thing that I did is the way they have this, this tab here is lower than the top of the pipe because they squeezed it closed, or they squeezed that tab. So I'm going to use 2 spacers here. You know, that just keeps it from pulling this way and tweaking. You know, it just keeps it kind of sitting happy where it's wanting to sit. But I think that's the deal, man. We're going to go ahead and put those bad boys on after we get them painted up. Probably paint them in black bed liner. That's it. In order to get my side lip here, you do something that's called scribing. Pretty much all it is you plant your fingers on whatever utensil you're using to mark. Plant your fingers, you create a distance. Create a distance between your knuckle and the tip of that pen. So you can ride it. See, I'll make a mark here. You can ride it the whole way around. Shit. As long as you get close. Once you start cutting it. Now, you can use a jigsaw if you're not real handy with the angle grinder. You can use a jigsaw with a fine tooth blade. You can. I used the angle grinder because that's what I'm used to. That's what I use for most everything. All right, so that's how we got our sides. Some people will take their fenders once they're cut and they'll lay it flat, and that's what creates their line for the cut on the fender. Me personally, I do it by eye. I'll do it by eye on one side and match the other side. So once you cut that lip off, you're going to end up with something that looks like this on one side and something that looks like this on the other side that has all this junk attached to it still. It's no big deal, you can cut right through it with a grinder. This fender is pretty sloppy and loose with only having the one bend on the one side. So for the front fender, being as it only has the 2 center holes, I'm going to use these little J pieces. Make sure it's seated all the way down on both sides, because that's what's going to match the round on your first side. Once you have it there, clamp it. Once it's clamped, you can drill it. Alright. Now in my case, I'm going to rivet it. But you can really do whatever you want. You can use screws, self-tapping screws, you can use bolts, but rivet seems like it makes the most sense to me. Okay. Much better. There we go. Now, doing that made this fender a lot stiffer. So when it's mounted by these two holes, you know, it should hold up pretty well. With the back fenders on this particular cart, I don't think I'm going to need to worry about stiffening it up any. But if I did need to, alright, this here is the same round as that there. So, you know, you get the idea. Same process, different piece of metal. As you can see, they're dog ugly right now, but they're going to serve their purpose. We need to get some hardware for the rear ones. I got to get some 1/2-inch spacers and some bolts. I was thinking of actually getting stainless hardware for everything. I may not. I might just paint everything. So I'm going to go ahead and get them cleaned up, sanded up, you know, get some bed liner on them, get some color on them, and put them back on, get some hardware, mount them permanently, and see what they look like then. So we got our Maytag fenders painted, picked up some new hardware. I ended up having to get these, I don't know if you can see that or not, the 1/2-inch spacers. Yeah, I don't know if you see it or not. Anyway, but there's 1/2-inch spacers in between here. They didn't have all the hardware I needed, so I had to reuse 2 old nuts, but that's only temporary. Either way, like I said before, I'm not a huge fan of fenders, but you know, these ones will serve their purpose. They blend in pretty well. Overall, I'm pretty happy. I mean, with the tires that we're going to be running, we got another set that match the front for the back. We're going to need fenders. So, it looks a little funny to me, but overall it's not bad. I got a little bit of tweaking to do on the brackets. Some of these brackets are bent up a little bit. But overall, I mean, they'll serve their purpose. They'll do what they're supposed to do. Hey, you can see that bracket's still bent, but sorry, I'll get it. And either way, I'm pretty happy overall. I think it's a good look for her.